ready, shorten up the backswing, step in, drive through. There's actually some simple adjustments we can make. Hi, I'm James Jensen. Welcome to my Pro Tennis Lessons instructional series. In today's clinic, we're going to talk about the most common faults that most people make, the things that I see on the courts at all times, and some of the simple fixes to take care of these faults. We'll work on the forehand, the backhand, your volleys, drop shots, lobs, overhead, serves, return of serve. Take a look at all the different problems that you have and see what common mistake you're making. Take the simple fix and improve your game dramatically just by making the simple adjustments. So go grab your racket and let's get started. Now we're going to work on the faults and fixes of the forehand. The two most common mistakes we make is number one, balls in the net. Number two, balls that are going long. There's actually some simple adjustments we can make to make sure that the balls aren't going in the net and the balls aren't going long. First one is that the balls that are going into the net. Typically it's caused because our racket is not dropping at least a foot below the ball to give the lift up over the net. Most of the time we're nervous because if we drop that racket head down and drive through that ball, the ball's just going to go flying. But what happens because of gravity, if you go and hit the ball straight across, the ball is going to dip down into the net. So even when we used to hit real flat strokes, we still swung from low to high. Now with the topspin that most of us hit, we still want to generate that low to high motion, and by brushing up the back of the ball, starting with the racket head at least a foot below the ball, that will give the lift up over the net. So in general, if the ball's hitting the net all the time, it's because your racket head is not getting below the ball enough. So that's the thing to make sure you do. In order to get that lift up over the net, let the racket head drop. A couple ways to do that. Number one is just relax as we swing. So as that racket goes back, let that racket just drop. Then we get the lift coming up over. Number two is use these things we call knees. They actually do bend. Let them bend. That will help drop the racket head down as well. Whether you hit with an open stance or a more closed stance, it doesn't matter. As long as we get the racket head below the ball, that will give the lift up over the net. So then you'll eliminate the balls that hit the tape. Number two is the balls that are going long. That's typically caused because your racket face is open at contact. Number one cause of that is racket face is open back here on our backswing. If it's open on our backswing, we want to make contact in front of the front foot. As we swing from low to high, look at the racket face. Maybe I'll get this angle. Going from low to high, the racket face will be open. Just by closing the racket face back here, what I mean by closing it is let that racket face be pointed down towards the ground. That will close things up. As you swing forward, the racket face will actually be vertical at contact. That's what causes the ball to go long. As long as you trust your stroke and go from low up the back of the ball and finish, that will generate enough spin to keep the control, to keep the ball in the court. And the second problem we have that causes the ball to go long, it's hitting a driving shot off of our back foot, not getting our weight transferred forward. If you watch the racket face as I go forward, if I'm going forward with my weight on my front foot, the racket face is in a great straight up and down position. But if I change and my weight goes to my back foot and I still try to drive, look at the racket face. My wrist stays the same, everything else stays the same, but the racket face is actually open. So by it being open, you're not getting the extra spin and drive to keep the ball down into the court. So if you do go to your back foot, that's a time you have to spin the ball more to keep the ball in. So you have to generate extra spin, which means come up the back of the ball more to generate the extra spin to keep it down in. You can't drive through the ball as hard off of your back foot and expect the ball to stay in. So those are the two things that most people run into a problem with: balls going into the net or balls going long. Make the simple adjustments, and I promise you, you'll be more consistent and get rid of a lot of those balls that are going out for you right now. What I want to do real quickly is a quick instructional on the forehand. I go into much more detail on my other forehand tape, but I'd like to go quickly over some of the basic things that you need to know in order to hit the ball properly. First of all is the grip. On the forehand, I like to use a semi-western forehand grip, which is V of the hand on platform number 3. If you take the racket again, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 underneath, 2, 3, and 4 on this side. So V of the hand, platform number 3. Another way to find it is set the racket down, pick the racket up. That's where you'll find number 3. All right, this will get the racket face in the right position at contact, that alone. You are going to have to adjust based on your swing, though. Everyone is slightly different. So some people may adjust one way or the other based on their swing. So adjust based on your swing. Next of all is your footwork. There's two basic ways to use your feet. One is what's called a square stance, which is, some people call it the closed stance. Closed is all the way over here, but it's a square stance where your feet are side by side. Your weight's going to the front foot, contact point right in front of your front foot. That's one of the ways. The second way is called an open stance, which is where you actually drive the weight off of your back foot. With an open stance, your body's in an open position, and you drive the hips and everything out into the ball. So that's one of the two types of footwork that you're going to use. I actually play with both when I'm playing. It's just going to have to adjust again based on your particular style. Next of all is your contact point. This is critical. I really believe too many people make contact way too late and wonder why they're having to snap their wrist in order to try to get the racket head back around. It's caused because we don't, number one, we don't trust our strokes, so we're not attacking the ball out in front. We get a little tentative and start catching the ball back around the belly button or even behind us. Then we're having to try to snap our wrist to get the racket face around to keep the ball in. So it's critical to understand our contact point on the forehand is in front of the front foot. When you trust it, everything out here, and when you're aggressive, you move forward, the racket face gets in the right position. When we get tentative and get back, the racket face opens. We have to start snapping our wrist in order to keep the ball in the court. So it's critical to make sure racket face is out in front, contact points in front of the front foot. Go attack that ball. If you attack it with the proper form, the ball will stay in. And as you start doing that and seeing the results, that'll give you more and more confidence, and you'll find that that form really will stay and be true. Next of all is your follow through, or the path of the racket. As long as you get your feet in position, the path of the racket will typically stay in the right position. First thing as a pro that we look at when I'm analyzing someone's strokes is I check their feet. If their feet are not in the right position, that will typically cause everything else, will cause people to tinker with mess with their grips. It'll cause the racket direction to go incorrectly. So based on your feet, get your feet in the right position, and you'll actually be able to hold the line through the ball much easier. So very important to understand that. So if you look at it from this position, I'm trying to take that racket back, and I'm trying to make sure that that racket goes down through that ball as long as I possibly can. What too many people do is they actually swing and pull out of the shot, and they're actually swinging across the ball. And what happens is you have very little room for air. If you swing across the ball from about there to there, I can make the correct stroke. If I swing through the ball from there all the way out through there, I can make the correct stroke. I want to give myself as much room for air as possible so that I can be consistent. That's why a lot of times what will happen is one day you'll be totally on if your timing's perfect. That next day you might be completely off because your timing isn't right. That's because you're not swinging a good path through the ball. So really concentrate on making sure that that racket face and head goes all the way through that ball. and then you follow all the way through. Trust your stroke. As long as you go from low and finish all the way across, the spin will help give you the consistency. Then you can adjust based on what shot you're trying to hit. The angle through the ball that I'm trying to hit for a driving passing shot with topspin is this angle right here. I'm going to drive straight through as much through the ball as I can. That keeps the ball lower over the net. If I'm going for a more loopy, high percentage stroke, the angle is going to be a little bit higher, maybe this angle up through the ball. If I'm hitting a topspin lob, all I do is, again, I change the angle even more up the back of the ball to get the loop up over someone's head, a driving topspin, aggressive topspin lob. So just based on the angle that I drive through the ball will determine what shot I'm hitting. So that's the basics of your forehand stroke. Check your feet first, then make sure that that grip is proper, racket face is dropping, going up through the ball and finishing all the way across. Your elbow should be able to point at your target. That will show you that you've gone all the way through to the right stroke. So that's the basics of the forehand that you'll need to know. If you want to get in more depth, like I said, I do have it on my other tapes in a lot more detail. Another common problem that we run into is trying to go for that down the line shot and the ball curves out. That's a common problem. What normally causes this is instead of coming over and holding that line through the ball straight up the line, we actually rotate our shoulders. It's called pulling the shoulders out. We rotate the shoulders out and we're pulling this way, putting an outside spin which actually curves the ball out of the court. And that's caused because we're not holding the shoulders and driving at our target. We pull the shoulders out, we're spinning our body, which causes the ball to spin. Makes total sense. The ball is coming off this way, spinning, spins this way, and then curves outside of the court. Now this is a little drill you can kind of look and see how your racket head is going. See if it's on track or not. If you'll watch, go to a nice long line and think about the ball or the path of the ball coming down that line. Then what you're trying to do is as that racket goes back, you're trying to hold that racket on that line as long as you possibly can. So if that's going right up the line, you're hitting right up the line, you're actually going to try to hold the line through as long as you possibly can. If you'll notice what happens, if I try to yank my shoulders across, what happens is I'm here, I'm yanking out already, my racket pulls off that line real easily. That is what causes that ball to get that outside spin to pull it out. Plus, I only have a very small range to where I can hit the ball correctly. Otherwise, I'm in a lot of trouble. As I start swinging down that line a lot further, from here all the way through there, I can hit the ball properly. Same with the balls pulling out on your cross court. It's going to be identical. You've got to make sure that you hold that racket on the line through the ball as long as possible. Again, all we would adjust if we're going for a specific shot is we move that line right over to our target and we try to hold the racket head through the line as long as possible. So if this ball is going to the long cross court, I'm going to get my feet set, I'm going to try to drive my racket head down that line as long as I possibly can. Then we adjust that line going straight down the line, it's going to be identical. I get my feet adjusted, I hold my racket head down that line as long as possible to hold on my shot. Very important to understand that as long as we keep that racket head through the line of the ball as long as possible, that gives us the highest percentages and the most possible likelihood of the ball going in. So hold the racket head through the line of the ball as long as you can. The only things that change from a ball that I'm hitting down the line and hitting cross court is where I make contact. The down the line ball is actually, my contact point is a little bit later. It's back here because then it'll go down the line. If I'm going cross court, I'm actually going to make contact with the ball out a little further, so it's a little bit earlier, but still holding the line through the ball for the contact point. So very important to understand, contact point is slightly later for down the line, a little bit earlier for across the court. But the idea is exactly the same. Another common problem most people run into is they lack power. Most people are wondering, why can these little girls hit the ball so hard and I'm such a big strong guy and I can't hit the ball very hard at all? Number one is these little girls are relaxed. They let the relaxed muscles and they use their whole bodies. So it's very important in order to generate power. It's understanding that our power comes from the legs on up. The most powerful muscles in our body are our legs and our backsides. That's where the power comes from. So as we're hitting, it's coming from the legs driving up and forward into the ball. The hips are rotating, so we're getting the legs driving, the hips rotating, everything's rotating, shoulders are rotating, we're driving our racket out in front and driving everything, all of our weight, that nice kinetic chain up through and into the ball. Too often we try to do it with real tight muscles. Anytime anyone understands that relaxed muscles are strong muscles, tight muscles are not very strong. So if you're trying to muscle it up with a nice tight muscle, you're actually not going to get that racket head going very fast. It's caused from nice relaxed muscles, everything working together so we can really generate the racket head speed to drive into the ball and generate that pace. The second thing is you have to learn how to hit with spin. So you cannot power things up if you're hitting very flat. Otherwise you have no room for air. You've got to learn how to hit some topspin in order to keep that ball in as well as we're hitting with all this torque and all this pace. That's what's changed over the years in tennis is we've gone from very flat strokes to where they hit pretty hard to right now everyone's just ripping balls because they're able to generate topspin and hit all out from anywhere on the court. And that's caused because of the spin. Another common problem is people get the ball too far out away from their body. Again, once that ball gets too far from your body, it becomes all arm strength. You lose the lower body, and so you're out here trying to generate pace. That's not the way we want to do it. We want to keep that arm in closer, that elbow in closer to our body. I don't mean attached to the body, but in closer to the body so everything's working together and driving all that weight into the ball. So it's very, very important to understand. Let me show you this from the side as well, just so you can kind of see it. If I'm trying to generate power, I want to get everything together. My legs are bending, my knees are bending, so I'm able to drive those legs up into the ball, or I'm able to go off this back foot, get the hips rotating into it, driving out through that ball, contacting up here, so everything is going forward into the ball, and then I'm driving through with a nice relaxed arm so that I can really generate some racket head speed. I don't want to get here, have my weight back, try to get here with nice tight muscles. I want to be relaxed with everything driving forward into the ball. Learn the spin again. That will help you hit hard and keep control of the ball. No fun to hit hard and have them all hit the back fence. Very fun to hit hard, have control of the ball, and feel like everything's driving into it. That makes it a lot of fun. So power is critical, and those are a couple of things to do in order to generate the power that you need.